Most of the time they need to be hospitalized overnight on IV fluids. I've had one patient die of seizures because they got into a really high dose of marijuana.
The poisoning is treatable but dangerous, especially in more concentrated forms of THC, the psychoactive compound in cannabis, like that found in edibles.
It can be life-threatening and it can be very, very serious.
Well, when you're out, you know you have to be very careful with your four-legged family member to make sure he or she does not eat the wrong thing out on the streets, especially now more than ever, because basically people have discarded things other than garbage and poisons. They've discarded their own joints. Yeah, that's right. The weed that they've been smoking all day and they've thrown it on the ground. There's been a report out that dogs are now picking them up and eating them and getting sick.
Marijuana is poison for dogs, which is now a problem because more than ever, there are now parts of marijuana cigarettes discarded on the street, and dogs are eating them.
He was doing his usual sniffing the ground and just looking at everything. And then when I got back to the apartment, about an hour later, he was non-responsive, was asleep, didn't move, and I woke him up and his eyes were really unfocused and his head was just moving like this constantly.
Vets say they have seen this kind of thing triple in the past 5 years, dogs getting sick from marijuana. It has happened to Colleen Briggs' dog, Bondi, 3 times. She's been very upset about it and worried about her poodle.
But before we start on this article from AP, I just want to first thank you for those of you. By now, we should have hit 700. Last I looked, we were down by at least 1 or 2. So thank you for those who have gotten us to this level. Really, thank you very much. If you liked the video, be sure to continue to share it. Hit that like, hit the notification bell. We really do appreciate it. And maybe today, for those of you who haven't subscribed on this channel, today's the day I earn your subscription. So, from the AP News, Scooby-Dooby Don't. Discarded joints poses hazard for dogs. And this is out of New York. Bondi, if I read that right, Bondi? And it's like, what is it, Hansel? An 8-month-old toy poodle has just returned from a walk when he began stumbling. His head wobbled and soon could be barely stand. So his owner, Colleen Briggs, rushed him to the vet. The good doctor quickly made a diagnosis. Bondi was stoned. On his walks, a sniff might have led to Bondi to a discarded joint, which he ate. He was just doing his usual exploring everything, sniffing everything, said Briggs, who began to notice that the pot shops sprouting around New York City, which most of them are illegal, the frequent whiffs of marijuana while circling her Manhattan neighborhood, and the unfinished joints now littering the sidewalks. In places like New York City, where the first illegal recreational pot dispensary opened last year, and users can smoke it in the open. As a result, more dogs are coming across and eating discarded joints and edibles, prompting an alarm among veterinarians and pet owners who blame the steep rise in poisoning on smokers, obviously to the harm that they do by littering. Marijuana poisons, which are almost never fatal, and you hear that term, almost never fatal.
Fluids. I've had one patient die of seizures because they got into a really high dose of marijuana.
Were once rare among pets. Even when medical dispensaries started opening, according to Dr. Amy Addis, a New York City veterinarian, until recently, many occurred at home when pets got into their owner's stash. The reason we're seeing so many cases is that people are using marijuana on the streets and then discarding the unwanted ends of their joints, Addis said. And that is a real problem because dogs will eat those. In the first 3 months of the year, she's already seen 6 cases which is about the same number she's treated over the past 3 decades. Let me refresh you on that. In the first 3 months of the year, she's already seen 6 cases, which is about the same number she's treated over the past 3 decades. Multiplying that by the number of vets working in New York City, she said, and the result underscores the widening problem. The Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals said cases are rising nationwide. Last year, there was an 11% increase from a roughly 6,200 cases reported in 2021, and over the 5 years, there have been a 300% increase. To me, it's unbelievable how prevalent this is now, said Addis. 21 states have legalized the recreational use of cannabis, and in large urban areas like New York, there is no escaping the whiff of pot in public. In many cases, owners are unaware that the dogs have eaten a leftover joint until they begin showing signs of toxicity. Even then, owners might not understand what is ailing their pets. Sue Scott was in a panic when her 9-month-old fawn pug, Cersei, collapsed after a recent walk. Cersei's paws spayed out on the floor. Her head shook to and fro as she drooled. A million things were running through my head, said Scott, 68. Marijuana poisoning was not among them. I would have never thought that, she said. Scott made a video call to Dr. Atlas, who said Cersei was showing the signs of being high. She now keeps Cersei's on a shorter leash, mindful where she pokes her nose. I don't know if you know pugs, they're constantly on the look for their next morsel, she said. Scott, who has owned 4 other pugs, none of them have returned home stoned, but sometimes it's pretty tough to control them because they are so fast. They just dart out at something. Although dogs rarely die from marijuana poisoning, treatment can be expensive and sometimes requiring a trip to the animal emergency room, a stomach pump, and intravenous fluids. The stress on the patient and its owner is enormous. Bondi has been poisoned 3 times, the first time last fall, said his owner Briggs. Even as Briggs grew more vigilant when walking her pup, she acknowledges that she must have gotten distracted when Bondi became sick a second time. That time she let Bondi ride out on his high. Walking him is just really an intense situation, so I'm always looking on the ground, and it's just everywhere now. She said she's spent of joints and that Blondie has come across on the walks. One time, Briggs said, I caught him and grabbed it out of his mouth. This is an issue. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a major issue. I'm a cat owner. I have 2 beautiful cats. And if something like this, I would be very, very upset. You have a situation here. And here's this. And I love how they word this. And AP is not the only one. And they were like saying, well, you know, people never have died from poisonings to the situation on there. But, you know, it's okay that this happens. And, you know, the way that they've been wording these articles. But this is here's the thought on here. Think about this for a minute. So far, we haven't seen a death yet. Okay. What happens when one of these dogs or cats come across one that's laced with fentanyl?
Fluids. I've had one patient die of seizures because they got into a really high dose of marijuana.
Now, if it's laced with the anesthetic, it wouldn't affect them too much. It'll knock them out. But if it's laced with fentanyl, how much damage do you think that would do to a loved one like that? This is the issue. These are the issues, the problems that are going to occur when you legalize marijuana for recreational use. These should not have been done for recreational use. It should have been only for medicinal, for if you are sick, cancer, situations where you have seizures. This is the only time it should be all right. Because in most cases, with situations where when it comes medicinal, you're handing most of it out in either a oil, tablet, and just only a little bit of time, you may be a patient may be smoking it. But here, all willy-nilly, most of these politicians, they said, oh, it's going to turn around the crime rates. It's going to take care of the whole situation if we legalize it. Bullshit. We've seen this in New York City. The prices are high at these recreational facilities. Where do you think they're going to get their pot? From the streets, from the illegal vendors, which we've just found recently, if you haven't seen my video yet, that some of them are being grown by Chinese growers in this country. Who knows what is being added to this drug? This is the dangers. And of course, the crime that's happening behind it, you've heard the situation with people being killed in these illegal smoke shops. And it also touts on top of other illegal situations, such as illegal cigarettes without tax stamps on them, vaping tools that have been made illegal in certain states, including New York, edibles that are being advertised sort of like candy, Dorito chips, Funyuns, stuff that kids would. Didn't we push out Joe Camel out of our cities? Didn't we tell the cigarette industry that stop advertising to children? Now we have the marijuana industry advertising to children. And we've already seen a record amount of kids being admitted to hospitals because they've OD'd on edibles. It's very easy to do because the strength, we don't know the actual strength of what's being put in these edibles. So you can imagine when a dog or a cat, goes off and eats some of this, gets high, gets sick, how long before one of them keels over and dies? Because they always keep saying, well, nobody dies from this. Nobody dies from this.
Fluids. I've had one patient die of seizures because they got into a really high dose of marijuana.
How do we know that, number one? They keep it quiet, but we could probably go find out, and eventually we will find out if someone passed away because of this. All we need is one doctor to sit there and say, this person died because of an overdose of marijuana. That's eventually going to happen. The lax thought. And the reason why I say this is because this is not the same pot that was around me when I was growing up. The strength of this marijuana is times 10 comparative, or even stronger comparative to what we had in the 1960s and 70s. A lot of people will tell you that. A lot of marijuana smokers that are in my age group will tell you that. It's not the same. And what happens when you make it stronger? You make it more deadlier. And like I said, they're lacing it with fentanyl. You say, well, they're not doing it to everyone. You don't know what they're doing. You have no idea. You are not there. Because when you do something to this nature and don't regulate it properly and just willy-nilly give licenses to anybody, especially those who have criminal records, and disregard the people that actually want to work with the industry properly, like veterans, who basically, if anyone that needs a situation like that medically, for medical medicinal, are veterans. We've seen what happened with them, especially those of you that are going through pain and sufferings that they shouldn't be going through. So tell me in the comments below your thoughts about this. I'm an animal lover. I love my cats. They are my children. I would never want them to go through that situation, to eat a joint and get sick like that. I would really, really be upset about that. Think about that if your child, your own child, boy or girl, took a joint and ate it, or an edible. Think about that. So comment below, let me know your feelings, subscribe, like, share this video, which is very important on there, and we'll see you on the next one. And don't forget, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye now.